In my previous video about education, I mentioned a little bit about gun control. A lot of people probably label me liberal in a lot of respects. I mean, I guess I kind of am. I don't really prescribe to any political views per se. A lot of my opinions kind of span multiple fields, like most people do. The only time you really prescribe to dead set political views is whenever you've bought into some kind of, completely sold out system, or you're trying to trick yourself into something that you're not. Everyone has different opinions, and nobody really fits into a single label, as a lot of people call it. But either way, gun control is a light of recent events. It's becoming a kind of a serious issue, I guess. My personal opinion is, I follow the Constitution. Government doesn't necessarily have a right to tell me what I can or cannot possess, be it drugs, personal possessions like guns, what have you. We'll get on the drug topic later. But with the gun control thing, on the one hand, I can kind of understand them wanting to ban fully automatic assault rifles, but then that technically does contradict the Constitution. On the other hand, I do understand the point that we have, as civilians, no use for it, except other than against other people who possess the same weapons. Which brings about a fundamental thing. If our government's trying to disarm us from owning the same weapons and munitions that they own, what does that really mean? Personally, I'm not quite sure. I'm going to stand by the raw idea that you can own whatever gun you want, but limiting that access to certain individuals in and of itself could be a good idea. For instance, somebody who's already previously committed crimes with weapons, not just assault rifles, but even like semi-automatic handguns, or even guns like a shotgun, where you have one or two shots, on average, with any given, set of loading the said munition. Even a knife, physical assault, people have a history, not just one time. I mean, because I've gotten in physical confrontations before, I'm not going to lie. They aren't always the, one person the other's fault. Sometimes it's a misjudgment on both people's parts. Sometimes it's one person being drunk or stupid or what have you against another person, and they, one or the other gets pinned with it, and that's not always necessarily a bad thing. It could just be a misjudgment. But people who obviously have a history of violence, but not just stupid little things, I'm talking about kind of serious violence here. Yeah, okay, I can understand limiting their access to these kind of things, because it's not really a good idea to give someone who's predisposed to violence a, highly dangerous gun. But I think there could be certain things that we set into action that could... You're never going to solve the problem. That's just given. The more regulation you set in, the bigger the black market grows. And people who really want the thing will be able to get it. But you can set aside, or set in place limitations. You could do certain things like I mentioned in one of my other videos about education. In high school, that was not kids, but teenagers. I mean, teenagers are basically adults. I mean, they don't have the full understanding that, necessarily like middle-aged or older, elderly people do, but they do have a certain degree of understanding about life, especially when compared to someone who's even younger than themselves. They have an understanding that guns kill. I mean, it's a basic fact. Guns are violent, they kill. Whatever you point, the gun at, it'll die if you pull the trigger. Chances are, depending on the caliber of the munition and the thing you're pointing it at, but generally speaking, it'll probably die. So, as I said in my other video, what if we put something in the public education system, such as a basic munition safety course? You understand the dangers and all the different things that go into understanding what a gun is, what different types of guns are, and what they do and how they are supposed to be utilized. I think that would it's like sex education, okay? It may not be necessarily a good thing, but it's not necessarily a bad thing either. You know, the more knowledge you throw out there, the better people are at making judgments for themselves. But even that's only going to go so far. To modify the current status quo, I would say a qualification exam. Not just a background check like what they provide now, but like you have to prove that you are proficient with the munition. You understand everything about it. You understand the dangers thereof. And, you know, something along those lines. You could prove that you understand what you own and what it's capable of doing and why you should only use it as a, we'll say, a last resort. Because really, when it comes down to it, most human beings can be subdued by another human being without too crazy amount of effort. The gun should really only be used as a last resort. You know, like, you got a family, some, you know, jackass breaks in thinking he's going to make cash quick by stealing your shit. Well, you could put a pretty quick into that just by pulling the weapon. Not even using it, just pulling the weapon. On that topic, I completely disagree with all the assholes who have gotten away with, in court, by being shot by a homeowner for excessive use of force or whatever, you know, what have you. Or the person breaks in and breaks their leg and then sues the homeowner because they broke the leg on their property. That's fucking bullshit. I mean, just outright bullshit. That stuff should be stopped. But nothing I can really do about that. You know, whenever I get all of you guys to agree with me, then we can put a public vote into action and change it. But that's going to be a long ways down the road. Nonetheless, I think that the best way to handle the gun control issue is not going to be to limit the guns, because all it's going to do is, think about it like a, I don't mean to compare you guys to children, but think about it like a child. Is it better to completely tell your child you cannot have this because I said so, or is it better to teach your children the responsibility of said thing or action so that way they can make a better judgment for themselves? Because a violent person who wants to kill somebody with guns or whatever, they're going to do it regardless of what they get. The only difference really is the magnitude. And granted, there's going to be some of you guys out there who say, well, them only killing 1 or 2 people is better than killing 100 or 200 people. But nonetheless, in my opinion, one person dying is no worse or better off than 100 people dying. I don't care. Somebody dying is just as bad as 100 people dying. That's just a fact. It's not good either way. So the best thing to go about it is to educate. People have to know what they have, what it's capable of, and why they should or should not use it, and when it is to be used. And it's going to be a long uphill battle. No matter what we do. It's really going to suck. But as far as I'm concerned, it's the only way to really go about it. You could also do things to limit access to fully automatic weapons by doing things like levying higher taxes, which I'm honestly against most taxes. You guys can call me anarchist or, you know, what have you, but taxes don't solve the problem. But they are a possible middle ground between complete lack of gun control and excessive use of force of our own government against civilians. Like I said, I'm not really quite sure which way to go on the whole argument, but either way really could work. It's really going to depend on what the general populace wants. As it stands, the general populace wants to completely outlaw these kind of things, but that's not the way to go about it, because they're still going to be made. I mean, most of these guns are manufactured overseas. If legitimate, you know, gun stores or shooting ranges or what have you aren't buying them and selling them, who's going to buy them? Some company is going to sell them to another, to the black market ultimately. They're still going to be out there. We won't get rid of it. Like I said before, it's similar to the drug laws. Drug laws are in effect, but does that stop marijuana, cocaine, you know, all that kind of shit from getting into our country? No, it doesn't. It just changes how the person gets it. If they want it, they're going to get it. That's all there is to it. So, as usual, leave comments, send me messages, and I'll post my email address, and let me guys know what you think. Later.